This episode of Spongebob Squarepants turned the whole internet upside down at one point. Nobody was ready for what we saw in this episode, especially coming from the show that is known for exactly that, its randomness and deep-cut references, but this one managed to catch everyone off guard. And we're talking about the episode 299A of season 14 called Tangle. And most importantly, we're gonna get into what this episode specifically teaches us right at the end of the video. The plot of this episode kicks off with Karen's birthday, and Plankton is trying to make it special. He sings to her, there is a small celebration, and then, of course, things go off the rails, and a fire from the candle gets out of control, and Karen ends up literally on fire for a moment. Plankton is able to put out the fire, and you would think she would get mad, but somehow, she is still smiling, and she gives Plankton another kiss, basically giving him another opportunity, which is surprisingly wholesome considering the situation and what just happened. Now, here is where it gets interesting. Plankton's big gift is a voucher for tango classes, and we can see in the episode that Karen isn't exactly thrilled about these news because she knows her husband. He's clumsy, small, and not exactly graceful, and apparently his past dancing experience involves getting thrown around in a mosh pit. Yeah, not the most convincing track record. But Plankton being Plankton, he decides to invent a solution. He builds a machine to stretch his legs dramatically to the point where he can dance with his wife. It looks painful and over the top, but in the end, it kind of works, and Karen seems amused enough to give the tango classes a shot. And while they're at it, have a little bit of a romantic session with each other because it is something they've lacked recently, to be honest. At the studio, we coincidentally run into Pearl and Spongebob also waiting to start the dancing classes, and two other side characters that you may not know that much about because they don't come up that often in the show, and they're Slappy and Sleepy. Then the instructor Susie Grove shows up and starts demonstrating to everyone the intense tango classes, and Spongebob is instantly captivated by this woman. Then she explains the rules of the game. If there is no partner, there is no dancing. And it casually turns out that Mr. Krabs sent Pearl to learn tango and paired her up with SpongeBob. And it's actually a callback to that older episode where they acted like a married couple, if you remember. That same awkward energy is there. Pearl then tells SpongeBob that there is no way they'll learn anything if he keeps goofing off. But Susie's style somehow gets him focused, and suddenly he actually starts dancing pretty well, something that catches Pearl off guard. Meanwhile, Slappy and Sleepy are way into each other's spaces, and Susie has to separate them to get the distance right because they can't get it together. Back with Plankton, we can see that he's struggling now, and his extended legs are making it incredibly hard to move, so his steps are very awkward. So Susie tells him that the problem is in his hips, not his legs. But Plankton, in classic fashion, mishears her and thinks that she said lips instead of hips, and it leads to a weird misunderstanding that Karen quickly shuts down. Susie then shows them how to move with proper form, and Karen starts paying closer attention to the dances because she's really intrigued and she really wants to do a great job. And it's here in this moment where Plankton tries to turn the mood a little bit romantic, but we can see that Karen just doesn't give him that emotion back. She's clearly focused on the dance and not the romance as we thought, and Plankton thought as well. Things then shift when Susie mentions that tango can also be aggressive, and that's all that Plankton needs to hear for him to be set off. He suddenly finds his groove, not by dancing gracefully, but by turning the whole thing into chaos. And he and Karen start knocking the other couples out of the way, which of course causes Pearl and SpongeBob to get launched across the room. And then at the same time, we see that Slappy and Sleepy start calling each other silly nicknames before Karen straight up deflates them with a spike. Now, Susie ends up getting injured, but instead of stopping the class as you would think she would get mad for getting injured, she praises Plankton and Karen's energy. Still, she makes it clear that they're not the top couple of the party. Not yet. That's when Bubble Bass and his mother show up. They're pretty late, and the excuse that he gives is that he needed to clean his underwear. That one line alone already tells you everything about this dynamic. Karen and Plankton, seeing this, try to claim that they've won many tango competitions over the years, but once Bubble Bass and his mom start dancing, it's obvious who really dominates the floor. Their technique is completely solid. Plankton then decides to cheat, obviously. He pulls out a ray gun that transforms him into Ray Ray, a more confident version of himself, and at first he zaps the wrong person, but once he uses it on himself, the difference is immediate. Now he and Karen are fully in synchronization with each other and dancing like absolute pros. But then out of nowhere, a fire erupts in the background for no apparent reason, which makes the situation a whole lot more chaotic. And here's where Bubble Bass finally accepts defeat, saying that Plankton's style is way too intense to hate on. And Susie finally names Plankton Plankton and Karen the best dancers in the class. But it comes at a cost. Plankton's mechanical legs are absolutely destroyed, and right when he's about to shout "my leg," Fred pops in and claims the line for himself. Karen then gives Plankton another kiss and tells him that it was the best gift she's ever gotten. And as a final punchline, the ray gun that he used before goes off again and zaps everyone, turning the entire room into Ray versions of themselves, and that's how the episode ends. And now you can see why this episode broke the internet. It's not for the story, it's because the episode is packed with meme-worthy moments. Plankton's elongated mechanical legs, Karen getting launched like a missile, Slappy and Sleepy giving each other weird nicknames, and most importantly, the instructor Susie Grove ridiculous dance poses. This is essentially what really set off this episode as a different one from the rest. But the number one reason why this episode broke the internet is mainly because of the relationship that we see between Karen and Plankton here. They are closer than ever, and they're incredibly cute. Everybody loved seeing them together, and seeing Plankton, which up until this point has been a character known for evil plans, finally come to the conclusion that the answer sometimes is love. And he only feels this way towards Karen, and he's able to do whatever it takes to make this woman happy. And this is where we get into the real meaning and what this episode teaches us in reality. The episode gives us more depth into the relationship of Plankton and Karen. They've always been one of the most unique couples in the show, and Plankton is known to be dramatic, ambitious, and a little delusional sometimes, while Karen is the complete opposite. She's patient, sarcastic, and way too smart for the situations that Plankton ends up in. But in Tangle, their dynamic shifts a little bit. There's more warmth that can be felt through the screen. Karen is genuinely intrigued by Plankton's efforts, not because he suddenly became more competent, but because he's actually trying now. When Plankton invents a leg-stretching technology just to be tall enough to tangle with her, it's absurd at first, but it also shows us how far he's willing to go for Karen. It's probably the most effort he's put into anything without an evil agenda behind it. For once, he's doing something that isn't about stealing the Krabby Patty formula, it's about making his wife happy. That is beautiful. Karen, for her part, doesn't go soft immediately. She's skeptical, guarded, but she slowly lets herself have fun, and by the end, they're not just dancing, they're having fun, competing, and working together as a team, which makes it more beautiful in the end. And that's why it hit so many fans online, because it was beautiful to watch their dynamic for years, to be able to finally see it explode in this episode. Underneath all the slapstick and fire effects, this episode actually has a meaningful message, one that speaks to relationships, identity, and even insecurity. At its core, Tangle is about connection, more specifically how connection requires effort, adaptation, and vulnerability. Plankton knows he's not a natural dancer, he knows he's not graceful or romantic, but he still tries, and he shows up. He tries to learn something new, not because he's good at it, but because he wants to share it with someone he loves, and that is Karen. Karen, on the other hand, learns that letting go and engaging in something silly can still be fulfilling, even fun. She is the more grounded one in the relationship, but she allows herself to enjoy the ridiculous journey, and together they find rhythm, literally in the episode, and they synchronize. This synchronization has a meaning behind it, meaning that they now have a clear path together. Even the Ray transformation at the end, as over the top as it seems, suggests that confidence often comes when you stop caring what other people think. Plankton only really starts to dance well when he lets go of being correct and focuses on being present with Karen. There's also something here about competition and the need to prove yourself. How couples sometimes get caught up in trying to win when really the best part is just dancing together and letting yourselves go. The humor masks it really well, but it's there. And this is why Tangle could have been a throwaway filler episode, but it ended up being something very different. It stood out not by trying to be a bigger episode in the Spongebob series, but by going back to what the series does best. Absurd, character-driven storytelling that hits you in the heart when you least expect it. It teaches us that meaningful connection doesn't really have to look perfect. Sometimes it's awkward, you have to make a lot of sacrifices like Plankton did, building a machine to stretch his legs to the point of absolute craziness just to be able to dance with his lover. Sometimes it's weird, but if you're both laughing by the end of it, you're probably doing something right. And maybe that's why it broke the internet, because in a world where these things are valued less and less, SpongeBob wanted to prop them back up in a way that it had never been done before. So what do you think, guys? Do you think the internet reacted really well to this message or not? I'd like to hear your replies in the comments. If you really liked the video, guys, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget about that thumbs up, subscribe, and we will see each other in the next one very soon, guys. Take care.